Just 2 years ago, if you wanted a pro-level coffee grinder with 80mm burrs inside, you were going to shell out like $4,000 for a Weber EG1. Then Zerno came along and disrupted the market by announcing the $2,300 Z2. Then Option-O did something that nobody expected. They released a new 80mm grinder that costs just $10 more than their flagship P64 grinder. At $15.95, it's a math problem that almost doesn't seem to even add up in the world of coffee grinders to date. Now, is this a perfect grinder? Can it keep up with those flagship grinders at almost half the price? The answer is almost, because while the coffee is really, really great, there are some hardware choices, some quirks that could be a deal breaker depending on the way you brew. Here's what's really crazy though about this grinder. The Option-O P64 was really more or less a standard for a long time. With the P80, Option-O not only designed a new 80mm Mizen Burr and released it in basically the same form factor as the P64 for only $10 more, they also added all this other stuff in the mix to improve the grinder further over and above where the P64 was at, without a big increase in price. Pretty impressive, really. Some other very interesting things have happened though as well in the meantime. First, the competition in this space has gotten really steep really fast, which is raising the bar for what people can expect from a grinder that costs this much, and Option-O has definitely been a part of this. The Buku Moto 80 will also start hitting the ground before too long, offering the same form factor in terms of burr size in an even lower priced package with a lot of bells and whistles. Now, that grinder is totally unproven at this point, but Buku did really disrupt the scale world with their scales over the last couple of years. Another interesting thing that has happened is the scope of what people will try and do with their coffee grinders has also widened. And depending on what you want to do, this grinder may do it very well, or it may not do it at all. So let's talk about this. This grinder was sent to me by the team at Cafune. It's the silver version, obviously. It also comes in black. And when you're using this, you put the coffee in up here. And this whole assembly acts as the adjustment dial as well. The coffee comes out here into this little catch cup, and the chute acts as a little knocker when you click it down like that. You can also put a portafilter into these forks here. One change the Option-O team made with this design is the catch cup now sits fully on top of the portafilter forks versus in between. It also comes with this dosing ring that you can put on top of your portafilter if you want to use that. And down here on the side, we have two buttons. The bottom one turns on what's called manual mode, and that's basically a straight on-off switch for the grinder. The top button engages what's called auto mode, which uses some torque sensors inside to detect when it thinks it's done grinding, and then it will spin the motor up really fast to spit out any retention that may be left inside. Let's try that out right now. All right, we will knock any grounds out of the chute there. Now that button also does a couple other things. If you quickly press it twice, it will just engage the purge section of that cycle. And if you hold it for 10 seconds, it will do a torque calibration. Now over on the other side here, we have an RPM adjustment, which goes from 300 to 1700 RPM. And the motor inside is a 500 watt brushless DC motor. Let's make a cup of coffee. All right, let's talk about taste. That is a nice shot of espresso. This is a Guatemalan coffee that we're roasting through our roastery project Coffee Co. And I'm getting really nice clarity and flavor separation without totally leaving behind sweetness and body. It's a really nice burr. This coffee is giving me like grapefruit, brown sugar notes, really well balanced. Very nice, very delicious, which has been typical with my experience of these burrs. Now, grinding filter coffee with this thing, also very nice. Clean, juicy cups, nice sweetness, not muddy, good clarity, but in a very forgiving way. Overall, very tasty cups. Works across espresso, soup style espresso, filter coffee, which I think is kind of the idea, and it is really a nice burr. And part of what makes the flavor profile so nice across such a wide range is not just due to those Mizen Burrs, which do have a very interesting and aggressive pre-breaker on their own, but also due in part to this little spiral-shaped pre-breaker called a PCS that sticks up and starts breaking out the beans before they even get to those main burrs. All of those factors working together, I think, are what make up the very approachable, clear but forgiving taste profile that covers a lot of ground across different brewing styles, and I think will appeal to a lot of different people. So I think if you hear all that and you think, okay, brand with a good track record, nice new grinder, good price, good burrs, this is all sounding good, that's great. But this grinder also may not be what everybody is looking for, and that's where we get to the almost part. Because this grinder has really been designed to be used a certain way, and if somebody wants to use it in, let's say, a totally different way, it may not do that very well. I'll give you a couple good examples. The RPM adjustment over here goes from 300 up to 1700. Now, in their recommended settings, Option-O recommends starting at about 600 for pour over, and they recommend somewhere between 1000 to 1100 RPM for espresso. Now, I actually found that the grind was actually more uniform and thus a little bit faster flowing with more clarity at higher RPM as opposed to lower. So I found that those recommendations did tend to work very well. But if you do decide that you want to experiment with very low RPM, the grinder can stall pretty easily, which has been a pretty hot topic with this grinder. Now, some stalls that people actually report with it are not actually a full stall out. It actually is to do with the auto mode, thinking that you've sort of finished what you want to be grinding too early and just stopping. You know, if you're pouring in your beans too slowly or you wait too long or anything like that. But if you put it on 300 RPM, which is not what Option-O recommends for any grind size, still, it is an option on the grinder though. If you put it on that, it will stall at a wide range of settings. I tried it not just with espresso settings, but also with filter coffee settings, and I was able to get some stalling. I tried it not just with ultra light roasts, but medium, even to medium dark roasts, and it would still stall. So even though with espresso I found it was even higher clarity at higher RPM, if you do get it into your head that you want to dip into that 300 RPM range, the grinder will likely have some protesting and may not want to do that for you. Now, I almost wish that Option-O hadn't even made 300 RPM an option on this grinder, because I feel like giving people access to that setting that will stall out with a lot of different coffees and settings is going to just result in a lot of people trying that and not getting the result that they expect. Now, one case where I did find that the 300 RPM setting was useful when I was doing Burr touch calibrations and that kind of thing, it was nice for that. But again, when it comes to actually grinding, with the way the uniformity changes and actually increases on espresso settings at higher RPM, you likely want to be in that range anyway, as long as you want to use the burrs that come with this grinder. If you are the type of person who, let's say you want to get like a super high clarity SSP brew burr or some other type of burr and try using it in this grinder, you're going to run into a couple issues. Number one, the mounting hardware may not match up. And there's been some reports of this already, people trying to drop in a different type of burr set, and they can't actually even get it to mount in there without some modification. Also, depending on what geometry of burr you want to try dropping in here, it's possible that the torque spec of those burrs may be out of line for how Option-O has designed this grinder, and you could actually run into more significant stalling issues with a different burr. It really seems like the P80 has been designed around specifically that Mizen burr and that pre-crushing system auger that sticks up. And you're kind of more or less designed to function within that system. And to Option-O's credit, that system does work very well and produce great tasting cups across a wide variety of both beans and brewing methods. Still though, some people may want a little bit more flex than that. Even with the way that they have designed the housing in terms of getting inside, It is not as easy as some other grinders. First and foremost, you have to slip this collar off and then turn it to get it to come off. And when you're pulling it off, you're kind of worried about marking this up and maybe damaging the finish here. They also send a small hex driver so you can open up the housing. And when you're trying to do this with the Allen wrench, you're dinging the Allen wrench into the side of this adjustment collar here. I recommend just getting a different type of driver, which makes it a lot easier. And once you have that, this is like a 30-second job to get in here. So suffice to say, I think if you're the type of person who wants to have your grinder apart all the time, try a bunch of different burr sets, this may not be the ideal platform for you. If you like the sounds of what the Mizen Burr offers, and you're happy to get this grinder and run it out of the box within Option-O's recommended parameters, I think you're very likely to have a fantastic time with this grinder. Now, a couple quick notes on performance. In terms of retention, which is the amount of grounds that hang around in here when you grind up a dose of coffee and may not come out until the next time, that number is basically 0. You're basically getting a flat in out every time you grind this, provided you're using this knocker. Really well performing in that regard. Sometimes I would recommend doing a spritz of water before you grind up your coffee. I don't love having that step in my workflow. And thanks to the configuration of the pre-breaker, the way the burrs are, the ionizer in here, and the knocker, you don't even really need it. I didn't do it when I ground that dose, and my experience has been, in a vast majority of cases, you can get by without that step, which is a huge plus. As far as getting in there and cleaning it out, they only recommend doing that once every 6 to 12 months. So again, I think it's really not meant to be opened and played with very often. And to be honest, with the very little retention of this grinder, I think when you do go to open it up, it'll be quite clean in there. Volume-wise, it is very quiet when it's running. There is a little tick that you can hear at lower RPMs. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it, it's just kind of the sound that it makes. When you are grinding, even then, it's not a huge volume jump. When it comes to burr alignment and calibration, the alignment on this thing is actually quite good, at least on this unit. My 0 point was calibrated about a tick and a half past 0. It's about 10 microns per tick, so that's about 15 microns off of the actual burr touch point. You can recalibrate that using a set of hex screws that kind of go around this collar once you get the sleeve pulled off. And when it comes to burr touch to burr lock, that was only a variance of about another tick and a half, so 15 microns, which is really nice performance. Combined with the marker test, which looked about spot on, the alignment of this grinder and grinders like it, I just see that bar continuing to go up and up, and I think that's a fantastic thing from a performance standpoint. Now, fidelity-wise, which is how much adjustability you have to dial in a shot of espresso, I did find the taste profile was pretty forgiving, but also that the sweet spot for getting the timing that you want is relatively narrow. I found that I was very frequently making adjustments in the like half tick to even quarter tick range to get that timing exactly to what I wanted. You know, going even 2 to 3 ticks can do, you know, a 30-second or even more difference in some cases. So you're really, in espresso world, you're really down there making some fine adjustments with this thing. Now, this burr does offer a little bit of higher clarity, and that usually comes along with a narrower sweet spot. There are some rumors, nothing confirmed from Option-O, or I don't have any kind of inside track here, but I have heard some rumors of a more traditional espresso burr at some point along the way that would offer a wider sweet spot, thicker body, and a little bit less clarity. Manufacturing-wise, Option-O is an Australian-owned company who manufactures in China. Now, they have a team that is permanently located in China, in addition to their team permanently in Melbourne, and their workshop in China is under the direct management of their team and only manufactures Option-O grinders. They also provide benefits and 2-day weekends to their workforce, which is not as common as you might think. If you're interested in any of that stuff, I'll leave a little bit more detail down in the description. So when it comes to the P80 overall, I think we have a really interesting story here that is actually a big win for home baristas. If we were looking at this grinder even 24 months ago, this would be like an earth-shattering grinder. Everybody would be like salivating, trying to get their hands on it. And that's a testament to what it is cramming in at basically the same price as its P64 predecessor. The evolution of the Mizen Burrs and the PCS system, which originally appeared in way more expensive grinders from their lineup, results in a really high performing cup across several different brew methods. But today we actually have a broad spectrum of grinders that are available in this category. You have the Weber EG1 at the top end. You have the Zerno Z2 offering more of a customization platform at a price kind of between the P80 and the EG1. You have this grinder, which is a solid performer within Option-O's lanes. And then you have the new Buku Moto 80, which is unproven today, but is dropping also at a very competitive price. You know, there were 64 millimeter grinders that we were all very excited about released not that long ago that cost almost as much as this with a lot fewer features attached. It seems like everybody is making big moves to bring around better grinders with more features at more competitive prices. But I want to know what you think about this grinder. Is this like a really nice all-in-one, or are you not really interested in staying within the lanes that have been set by Option-O as they've designed it? If you're just trying to pick a grinder and you're not really sure where to start, I'm going to leave a video here that I think will be very helpful for you. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.